We start with the clown show that the Republican field has become, as we saw last night in that debate. U.S. Congressman Barney Frank's a Democrat of Massachusetts. David Corn, of course, is an MSNBC political analyst and Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones magazine. Congressman Frank, I have a lot of respect for you, as you know. I want you to listen to what, if you didn't catch it last night, here was the inimitable Newt Gingrich last night talking about you and former Senator Chris Dodd, saying you should both be in prison. Let's watch.
If they want to really change things, the first person to fire is Bernanke, who is a disaster as chairman of the Federal Reserve. The second person to fire is Geithner. And if you want to put people in jail, I want to second what Michelle said. You ought to start with Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, and let's look at the politicians who created the environment, the politicians who profited from the environment, and the politicians who put this country in trouble.
Clearly not saying they should go to jail.
Well, in Chris Dodd's case, go back and look at the countryside deals. In Barney Frank's case, go back and look at the lobbyists he was close to at Freddie Mac.
Well, that was a portrait of malevolence. Congressman Frank, what do you make of this? Is this libel or what is it? I don't know what to make of it.
Well, first of all, you have to understand, when you think you are the intellectual leader of the free world and you find yourself struggling to pass Michelle Bachmann in a poll in Iowa, it is unsettling. I understand that the poor man isn't getting his due. But what was particularly extraordinary was he was talking about a period when he was in charge, not me. You know, the run-up to this crisis, the crisis began to bubble over in 2007 and 2008. The Republicans controlled the Congress from 1995 through 2006. Newt was himself Speaker for 4 years, did nothing about the problems he accuses me and Chris of causing, and then it was Tom DeLay. So apparently I'm regretful, Chris, apparently I had some secret influence over the Republican leadership that I never knew about, because if I had, I would have told them not to impeach President Clinton. I would have told them not to go to war in Iraq. I would have told DeLay not to go on the dance show. I mean, there are a lot of things I would have done. The second thing I would say is what he then is objecting to is the bill we passed. Yeah, they don't like an independent consumer agency and the work that Elizabeth Warren did. They don't want derivatives to be regulated. Incredibly, they want to go back to the situation where AIG was able to get itself into all this trouble. They don't want a fiduciary responsibility on people who advise investors. So, as I said, first of all, he's talking about the period when his party was in control. In 2007, when we took over, we began to make illegal these subprime loans, et cetera. And as I said, poor Newt is just beside himself. He thought he was a great gift to the country, and he finds himself being taken back to the return window, not at Tiffany's, I guess, but at a different place, and he can't deal with it.
Well, let me suggest that behind the malevolent comment of Newt Gingrich last night about you and former Senator Dodd was a grim effort to try to raise a few bucks in his campaign. As you must know, Congressman Frank, because everybody in business knows it, you and Chris Dodd did something to regulate those people. And the one, probably the shiftiest of them, like it the least. Is this a way to pass the tin cup around and get some money for what is already a cash-strapped campaign? Not only a ludicrous one, but a poor one.
Oh, I suppose so. Look, there are a lot of people who made a great deal of money, and if you read the journals now, the papers, if you listen, yeah, there are people who are complaining that because of what we did, they can't do as much. By the way, what we did, I think, was to restrict some of the activity that added nothing to the real economy. The trading paper back and forth. I mean, these people they were engaged in economic transactions that had as much relationship to the real economy as fantasy football has to Sunday afternoon, except they were making money off it. And yeah, there were some people very angry at us because they're not making the trading profits they used to make. And yes, I'm sure that Newt does make some money off that.
Well, what do you make of the Republican Party? You grew up in Massachusetts and New Jersey way before that, and you know there used to be a Clifford Case Republican Party, a party of Governor Sargent and reasonable people. And what happened to that last night? Well, I want you to start with looking at it. I want you to take a look at it. Here's Rick Perry, who actually is a governor of one of the states, maybe a secessionist governor, but a governor. And here he is talking about the Revolutionary War. Of course, Massachusetts had much to do with it. Here he is talking about when it was fought. Not about when the earth was founded 5,000 years ago, according to these people, but when we fought our revolution. Doesn't have that part. Let's listen.
Our founding fathers never meant for Washington, D.C. to be the fount of all wisdom. As a matter of fact, they were very much afraid of that. And it was actually the reason that we fought the revolution in the 16th century was to get away from that type of onerous crown, if you will.
How do you describe this knucklehead history? I mean, this guy's the guy that said Texas has the right to secede from the Union. I think we fought a war over that. Now he is placed. Well, they always have problems with the history of the universe. There are problems with that. But here he is saying our country was founded back in the 1500s.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think Rick Perry is jealous of me. And here's why. He wrote a book, or he signed a book that someone wrote. And he said, he could never live in Massachusetts because they vote for Ted Kennedy, a great senator was alive, obviously, at the time, John Kerry and me, even after they know what we stand for. And he was appalled that people would vote for us even after they know what we stand for. The reason I think he's jealous is, as people in the Republican Party have found out what he stands for, they're not voting for him. So he is very jealous that someone can tell people what he thinks and not have to repudiate it or go back on it. The floundering around, it is discouraging. But to go back to your main point, I was very bipartisan when I was in the legislature. There were some differences, but we could work together on things. You have a group of people now. The Republican Party today is in the grips of the most rigid ideological splinter we've seen. And the problem is that they don't represent the whole country. They represent the people who vote in Republican primaries, and that has driven all of them far to the right. So Mitt Romney, for example, is in a mode of repudiating position after position. I noticed in the debate last night, they quoted his having supported the Bush administration's efforts to deal with the financial crisis in 2008. He's now repudiating that. He's, of course, repudiated the health care. And there has never been a time in American history when so rigidly, ideologically extremist a group has controlled one of the major parties.
And he was the sober one last night. Let's look at Rick Santorum last night. I want David to get in here. Rick Santorum last night advocating basically getting rid of all corporate taxes for manufacturers. Just get rid of them all. No pay for it, just get rid of them. Let's listen.
What happened was we became uncompetitive. So we need to be competitive. And that's why I proposed taking the corporate tax for manufacturers and processors, taking it from 35% and eliminating it. 0% tax. Allow this to be the manufacturing capital of the world again.
This is just in line with what Bachmann said the other night in the last debate, saying we shouldn't have to pay any taxes.
Well, first, I think I should say that I'm here to make a citizen's arrest of Barney Frank, if I have the chance. I mean, they're bidding down. Pretty soon it's going to be negative numbers on taxation. I mean, Herman Cain's plan would raise taxes on the poor. Michelle Bachmann says we shouldn't pay taxes. He doesn't want taxes on any manufacturing. But his headline was, I want to go to war with China. Yeah. He meant an economic war, but it's like the war language, the rhetoric has to be as excessive as it can for any of these guys to have a chance of winning over those Republican primary voters that Barney was talking about.
And can I add, by the way, you're talking about not raising taxes. They've backed away from savaging Social Security and Medicare, but these are all, except for Ron Paul, they all want to greatly increase military spending. Here we are spending at the highest rate. We're spending at Cold War rates of military spending going all over the world. And Romney's attacking President Obama for not spending enough in the military. So the nonsense is that you cut taxes, you claim that you're going to protect Social Security and Medicare, and you increase military spending. They're not just going to... They're going to really make the military into volunteers. Volunteers in the sense that we won't be able to pay anybody. Yes. We'll have to have volunteer people to give us bullets, volunteer people to fly the planes. I mean, the logic is overwhelming. How do you substantially increase the largest single item in the discretionary budget, military spending, and then cut taxes and say, but Social Security and Medicare will be fine?
Well, last night, Congressman and David, they were supposed to stick to economics, but of course, Michelle Bachmann couldn't avoid religious concerns. Here she is passing what even my producers think was a joke. I don't think so. Talking about the sign of the beast, which I learned from some of these characters, is apparently 999, Herman Cain's economic program turned upside down, 666. Let's listen to her brand of humor. This is Michelle Bachmann, desperate.
When you take the 999 plan and you turn it upside down, I think the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
What would you say if you were debating a person like that who shifted the topic to the strange far-right Christian notions about the devil and the sign of the beast? She can't resist that catnip.
I guess if I were debating her, not just debating her, but I was losing to her in the polls, I would do exactly what Newt Gingrich did. I'd just start to say outlandish things and change the subject.
David, I can't keep up with. By the way, Barney's as smart as Newt thinks he is. That's the problem we have here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there is a slight chance, maybe more than slight, that Michelle Bachmann really believes this.
The sign of the beast.
Yes, the sign of the beast.
Herman Cain is the Antichrist.
That perhaps, I mean, she has said so many outlandish things over the years, and she has a very fundamental view of the world. She has a very conspiratorial view of the world. Next time you get on the show, ask her about Agenda 21. She believes in black helicopters and everything leading up to the rapture. So it's not inconceivable that this wasn't a joke.
Let me go back to square one. Congressman Frank, again, besides being a liberal and a progressive supporter of your interests and your district up there in Massachusetts, you do study politics and history. What has happened to the Republican Party? Why does it look like a Tea Party-fueled party looks like it's given up in finding a candidate that it likes and looks like it's willing to go with one it doesn't like?
Well, it's a combination of things. I think the fact is that the economy went very sour during a Republican regime. And I want to stress this again. While the Republicans have had this great success in saying, the Democrats caused the problems, for 6 years, from 2000 through 2006, which is clearly the time when the economic problems festered and got worse and were ready to blow up, we had Republican control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate. That's unusual. The last time we had a 6-year period of one party controlling all three branches was Lyndon Johnson. So they had control, and it went terribly wrong. And here was this problem. They could not deal with that, and they could not deal with the problems that there was too little regulation, too little government intervention, too little of a public sector role along with the private sector. So they were literally kind of driven mad by it, and the anger just exploded on themselves. So I guess they had to say, look, they couldn't possibly go to the left. If George Bush's administration was a failure in this leading up to the economic crisis, and of course in the Iraq War, the greatest mistake in American history, I believe, that was a single conscious decision, then the only answer is to go further to the right. I mean, they couldn't stick with Bush. They are constitutionally unable to move even to a more centrist position. So they had then, the only place they could go was to the right. That's why you have people like Gingrich and like Romney and a lot of others far to the right of where they ever were before. Because, again, the model they had of a Bush administration became indefensible. And they had to find a new model. And given their ideology, given their positioning, the only one they could find was to the right.
You're invited back on this program anytime you'd like, especially when you're accused of a felony by Newt Gingrich.
Well, be fair. He didn't say that. It might have been a serious misdemeanor.
Okay, serious misdemeanor. Anytime, any place. Thank you very much, Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts, who I do believe has the IQ that Newt, in his delusion, thinks he might have had at one point in his earlier life. Thank you very much, of course, David Corn.